In May 1998, a thick morning mist blanketed the lush green mountains surrounding the town of Flat Rock, North Carolina. In the Pisgah Forest, the fog and earth vapors blended into the characteristic damp, cold scent of the American South. A small wooden cabin nestled quietly in the woods, where the Carver family spent their weekend getaway, still had lights on until midnight that night. Then everything suddenly went dark. No one ever saw them again. The next morning, the mail carrier knocked on the door endlessly with no response. Dishes were left unfinished on the table, the porch light was still on, and the white Jeep was missing from the trail. The police arrived and saw something they would never forget: bloodstains smeared on the wooden floor, a dog barking hoarsely, and a heavy silence enveloping the house. The family's two children, Lucas, 9 years old, and Megan, 8 years old, were not there. Tiny Flat Rock was suddenly shaken. A family vanished into the forest. No gunshots, no witnesses, just scattered clues, red Jeep tire tracks, zip tie remnants, a piece of silver duct tape stuck with human hair. As the sun set behind the mountains, search teams fanned out into the darkness, their flashlights slicing through the fog like knives. But the more they searched, the more they realized what they were facing wasn't just a disappearance. It was the beginning of a chilling series of crimes, meticulously orchestrated like a ritual, a case where the perpetrator always seemed one step ahead of the police. 25 years later, an unexpected call from a Denny's restaurant in Asheville sent shivers through America. A young woman walked in, and her eyes carried the shadow of a past thought long dead. This wasn't just the story of a cold case. It was a journey to reclaim justice buried for 25 years, where DNA, digital data, and human memory together unlocked the door to the crime. And behind it all, hidden in the North Carolina mist, was a question that never grew old. Would justice truly come, or was it merely the faint light of unresting souls? Before diving deep into this shocking true story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love these journeys to uncover forgotten justice, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. Flat Rock, North Carolina, is a small town tucked away amid pine forests and winding dirt roads of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The mountain air carries the scent of pine resin, spring rain, and the chirping of early cicadas. The Carver family lived in an old wooden cabin, isolated at the end of Gravel Creek Road, about a 10-minute drive from the town center. Linda Carver, 40 years old, was a postal worker. Tom Riley, her boyfriend, was a freelance electrician. The three children, Evan 13 years old, Lucas 9 years old, and Megan 8 years old, were often seen by neighbors playing in the yard or biking to the small stream behind the house. That mid-May weekend, the family seemed to be going about their routine as usual. On Saturday morning, Linda stopped by the local grocery store, bought a few bags of groceries, and told the shopkeeper they would be staying home all weekend, because Tom needed to fix the fence. That evening, the cabin lights stayed on late. A neighbor passing by later recalled hearing soft music drifting from the house, mixed with the dogs barking and the children's laughter. That was the last time anyone saw them. On Sunday morning, when the Flat Rock post office opened, Linda didn't show up as usual. She was so punctual that her co-workers could set their clocks by her routine, so her absence raised eyebrows. A co-worker called the cabin, but no one picked up. At the same time, Richard Carver, Linda's ex-husband and the father of the three children, also tried to reach them, but got no response. That afternoon, worry mounted as the house phone rang endlessly without answer. Richard drove from Hendersonville City to Flat Rock, the 15-mile road shrouded in fog and light drizzle. When he arrived, he saw Tom's green pickup truck still parked in the driveway, the house door shut tight, curtains half drawn over the windows. Inside, hallway light filtered dimly through the curtain gaps, but there was no sound. Richard knocked on the door, calling each person's name, hearing only the dog's howl echoing from the back. He circled the cabin, noticing the mailbox stuffed with letters, and the morning newspaper still uncollected. Sensing something was wrong, he tried the back door handle, but it was locked. Rain began to fall heavily, wind rustling through the forest like distant echoes. Richard stood on the porch, peering through the glass door, seeing familiar objects in silhouette: the wooden chair, Megan's small shoes, Tom's jacket hung on the hook, all in their places, only the people gone. After a few minutes of hesitation, he stepped to his car, hands trembling as he dialed the Henderson County Sheriff's Office emergency line. Amid the rain and his ragged breaths, Richard reported that his ex-wife and 3 children were missing. About 40 minutes after Richard Carver's call, 2 patrol cars from the Henderson County Sheriff's Office turned onto the rain-soaked road leading to the end of Gravel Creek. Rain poured heavily, headlights reflecting off wet black tree trunks. The Carver family cabin emerged in the flashlight beams, a 2-story wooden house with a silver tin roof, an old swing swaying lightly on the front porch. Tom's green pickup was parked in the yard, doors locked, wipers still upright. Linda's silver sedan sat beside it. No signs of forced entry or struggle. The driveway showed only old tire tracks from the family itself. Deputy James Lattimore and his partner, Deputy Harris, circled the house. The front door was locked, windows shut, only the living room curtains slightly parted to reveal faint yellow light. They knocked and called for the owners, but no answer. Richard stood huddled under the porch, voice shaking, saying Linda never locked the back door if anyone was home. The 3 made their way along the path to the rear. A black dog lay curled against the wall, fur soaked, whimpering softly. Flashlights swept over the fence, revealing small muddy footprints, leading into the yard, and vanishing into the darkness. Deputy Harris tried the back door handle, locked from inside. Through a small glass pane, he saw the kitchen light still on. On the dining table were dishes, an old coffee mug, a phone fallen face up on the floor, with its red indicator light blinking. Lattimore radioed dispatch for permission to force entry for a welfare check. Approval came. He used a slim crowbar to pry the hinges. A soft metallic creak sounded, then the door swung open, a wave of damp, musty wood smell rushing out. Inside, the kitchen was tidy, everything frozen mid-motion: plates, with food remnants, a pot on the stove with the burner off. Wall clock stopped at 10:12, no signs of ransacking or breakage. They swept lights down the hallway. Harris paused at the sound of dripping water from the ceiling to the floor. On the living room coffee table, a newspaper lay open and unfinished, a wooden chair slightly askew. The house was eerily silent, save for rain pattering on the tin roof. The 2 officers split up to check each room. The ground floor held the living room, kitchen, and Linda's master bedroom. The bed was neatly made, jewelry untouched in its box. The nightstand drawer ajar, landline cord unplugged. No signs of theft. Lattimore went upstairs to the children's room. Toys scattered on the floor, books open on the desk, nightlight still plugged in. Everything suggested abrupt abandonment. He noted the house air was warm, with an unusual heavy odor but not gas. After checking the entire upper floor and attic, the team found no one. They stepped outside, taping yellow caution tape around the porch, and announcing property secured for investigation. Outside, the rain intensified, patrol lights casting halos on puddles. Richard Carver stood by his car, face ashen, eyes fixed on the second-floor window, where his daughter's bedroom light still glowed. An officer took a preliminary statement, the time of his call, last time he'd seen the kids, family routines. At the statement's end, Lattimore wrote, "No forced entry, scene secured." Before leaving, Harris went back to turn off the house lights. As he reached for the switch, a curtain fluttered slightly, his flashlight catching the wooden chair still swaying gently. He paused for a moment, then shut the door, sealing the new lock. The cabin was handed over to the criminal investigation team for the next morning. That night, the road to the Carver house sank into rain and fog, lightning flashes through dark windows, making the wooden structure look like it stood frozen in the woods, harboring an unsolved mystery within. Early the next morning, the rain tapered off, but thick fog still cloaked the forest around Flat Rock. From the head of Gravel Creek Road, Henderson County Sheriff's Office patrol cars lined up and advanced toward the Carver cabin area. The criminal investigation team, forensics personnel, and K-9 unit were mobilized. Yellow lights from field vehicles cast an eerie glow on sodden tree trunks, creating a scene both somber and urgent. Deputy Lattimore, who had stood watch overnight, handed the scene over to Lieutenant Wallace, head of the investigation team. The cabin was fully cordoned off, leaving only one entry for the forensics team. Outside, search personnel began combing the forest in a grid pattern. The front yard still bore strange tire tracks imprinted in the mud. Deep treads with a fishbone pattern, unlike Tom Riley's vehicle tires. Wallace ordered photos, measurements, and submission to headquarters for comparison. A few meters away, a small pink hair clip was found tangled in wet grass. Lattimore crouched to pick it up with rubber gloves, bagging it as evidence. He clearly remembered that the youngest girl, Megan, often wore that exact type. The silence around the cabin now felt heavier. The forensics team surveyed the exterior, gate, porch, walkways, backyard. Each footstep crunched on dry leaves. In the grass, they found a drag mark stretching from the fence to the forest edge, as if something heavy had been pulled. Not far off, on wild bushes, a small piece of green fabric caked in mud was spotted, suspected to be from children's clothing. All were numbered, documented, and collected. As the sun rose higher, the search expanded to a 2-mile radius around the cabin. The K-9 team brought 2 bloodhounds trained for human scent. Groups of 4 fanned out in directions along forest trails. The damp chill mixed with wet earth smells, breaths mingling with radio static. The dogs barked upon reaching the backyard clearing, where grass was trampled into clear streaks. One, after sniffing along the fence, halted at the edge of a dry creek bed, where more evidence emerged. A pair of muddy plastic children's sandals. On the strap was etched an L, the mark Linda used to distinguish her kids' items. Lieutenant Wallace ordered a temporary command post set up at the hillside base, laying out area maps. Teams reported via radio, no signs of life, only repeated adult shoe prints in the same direction into the woods. Some prints were larger than average, around size 12. The K-9 team followed that trail, but lost the scent when exiting the pine forest into rocky terrain. An officer checking the trail to the old highway found small rubber fragments, remnants of car tires. Around noon, rescue forces from Hendersonville City reinforced the effort. Over 30 people split to search along both sides of the trail, while another group checked gas stations and motels within 5 miles. Police set up temporary barriers, blocking vehicles from the area. News began to spread. A few local reporters appeared, but were kept from the scene. Inside the cabin, forensics finished initial evidence collection and moved to video documenting the site. All data was archived for later analysis. Early afternoon, a young officer brought back an odd receipt found in a roadside ditch. It was dated May 16, 1998, from Pisgah Trail gas station, about 30 miles from Flat Rock. On the back, faint pencil marks were visible, content unclear, only partial characters. Our Jeep readable. Wallace ordered it preserved, suspecting a link to the questionable vehicle. However, no witnesses around the cabin area had seen strange cars the night before. A neighbor mentioned only hearing an engine around 3 a.m., mistaking it for thunder. As dusk fell, the search paused due to rising winds. Personnel packed gear, field tents, and returned to the command post. On the summary board, the day's finds were logged: strange tire tracks, children's hair clip, drag marks, green fabric scrap, small sandals, gas station receipt, all loose pieces, not yet forming a clear picture. Wallace gazed into the pitch-black distant forest, then back to the cabin, where tech team flashlights still flickered in the living room windows. He ordered overnight guards, awaiting deeper interior investigation at dawn. As forces withdrew gradually, Richard Carver remained in his car, eyes glued to the cordoned house. Rain drummed on the roof, blending with sporadic police radio chatter. The first day's search ended without a single sign of life. In the preliminary report to headquarters, Lieutenant Wallace noted at the end, "No victims located. Expand search radius around cabin by additional 3 miles. Tracks indicate movement away from scene in rainy conditions. Suspect 4-wheeled vehicle. High likelihood of abduction." The next morning, the forest around Flat Rock was shrouded in thick, damp fog heavy with the scent of pine resin. At 6 a.m., the criminal investigation team returned to the Carver cabin. Under the dim gray light of early dawn, the yellow crime scene tape glistened on the porch, beaded with rainwater droplets. Lieutenant Wallace led the forensics team through the back door, accompanied by Deputy Lattimore and 2 SBI criminal technicians. They carried cameras, evidence kits, alternate light sources, and DNA swabbing kits. The air inside the house was cold and damp, thick with the smell of rotting wood, stale coffee, and cigarette smoke, a scent so cloying it seemed preserved from the last night anyone had been there. As soon as the door opened, light from the hallway spilled in, illuminating dark streaks on the kitchen floor. A dark brown smear stretched from the refrigerator to the edge of the dining table. One technician crouched down, gently swabbing a sample with a cotton tip, confirming it was dried blood. On the table, bowls and plates remained as they were from the interrupted meal. A spoon lay askew, with a bit of cold porridge left in the bowl. The neat arrangement of the items contrasted sharply with the unnatural feeling that permeated the entire house. Wallace ordered full-scene photos before proceeding to the living room. The living room, less than 20 square meters, had a beige carpet soaked with rainwater from a leaky roof. Under the lights, the carpet showed mottled old red stains. When the light shone closer, another dark patch appeared in the corner near the fireplace, where furniture had been shoved aside. Wallace raised his hand to signal everyone to stop, approaching cautiously. Under the coffee table, a man's body lay face down, hands bound behind his back with black plastic ties. The shoulders of his shirt were soaked, his skin pallid blue, his head was wrapped in multiple loops of silver duct tape. A lock of disheveled brown hair escaped the tape, revealing a cracked scalp. On the wooden floor, blood had dried into pools. Wallace made a preliminary ID. It was Tom Riley. The air in the room grew heavy. Another technician circled behind the fireplace, where the rug had been pushed askew. There, a second body, a woman's, lay face down on the floor, wrists bound with white zip ties. Her shirt was bloodied at the shoulder and nape, long hair matted to the silver duct tape wrapped tightly around her head. A gold ring remained on her finger. Wallace recognized her as Linda Carver. He crouched for a quick check, confirming rigor mortis had set in. Time of death about 2 days prior. The scene left the team silent for a few seconds. No one spoke. A forensics officer entered to note 2 adult victims, both prone position, hands bound, fatal head wounds, signs of controlled violence, perpetrator likely experienced in restraint. Wallace ordered a check of the remaining rooms to ensure no one else was in the house. Deputy Lattimore and 1 technician headed to the second floor. The wooden stairs creaked underfoot. Flashlight beams swept the hallway, pausing at the door to the 3 children's room. The door stood ajar. Inside, the air was thick with dampness and a faint metallic tang. Lattimore pushed it open and saw, in the middle of the floor, a small dark blue blanket rolled up. When he unrolled it, he froze. Beneath was the body of Evan Carver, 13 years old, lying on his side, hands taped together, ankles zip-tied. His head was wrapped in silver tape around the mouth and chin, with a deep round depression at the temple, surrounded by darkened dried blood. Next to the bed was a pair of small sneakers, laces undone, mud streaks on the soles. Lattimore took a deep breath and radioed down to report the 3rd victim. Below, Wallace ordered immediate scene photos and to preserve the body's position. He and the forensics officer hurried upstairs, surveying the entire room. Everything indicated movement during the attack. Desk shoved aside, curtains torn, bedside lamp toppled. No signs of prolonged struggle, suggesting the victim was subdued quickly. A small handprint on the wall, higher than Evan's reach, possibly from another child. Once documentation was complete, Wallace gathered the investigation team downstairs. He made a preliminary conclusion: 3 victims deceased on the night of the 17th, the 2 younger children, Lucas and Megan, absent from the house, and considered missing. He requested a 3-mile perimeter lockdown and FBI Charlotte assistance for kidnapping investigation. The technicians began collecting evidence: duct tape, zip ties, fingerprints on a water glass, a black hair fiber caught in the tape on Linda's head. Under the kitchen floor, they found drag marks, indicating the perpetrator had moved bodies from another location. At the kitchen corner, a toolbox lay open, missing a framing hammer, the type Tom commonly used for work. Wallace noted, possible weapon from victim's own tools, repurposed by perpetrator. Outside the back porch, in the mud, large boot prints were clear, sized and leading out toward the forest. By afternoon, the forensics team finished photographing and marking the scene. They collected a total of 34 items. The bodies were transported to the Henderson County Hospital morgue for autopsy. The cabin was resealed, guarded overnight. Outside, rain fell again. As Wallace stepped onto the porch, he paused, gazing at the fence toward the forest, where strange footprints led away. A sense of unease stirred in him. The scene was too tidy, victims bound identically, weapons selective, and most chillingly, 2 children vanished without a trace. In the report filed with headquarters that evening, he wrote 3 victims deceased at scene, no signs of forced entry. Homicide behavior highly controlled, perpetrator familiar with house layout. 2 missing minors, possibly abducted immediately after incident. Case upgraded to major felony. That same afternoon, as the bodies were removed, the Carver cabin was fully handed over to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, SBI forensics team. The forest rain tapered off, leaving cold damp air clinging to the wooden floors, the house still faintly scented with iron and old charred wood. Portable halogen lights were set up throughout the living room and kitchen, illuminating every corner, turning the silent house into a makeshift lab. Lieutenant Wallace stood in the main room, observing the white-suited technicians begin their work. Every movement was video recorded, every touched item numbered sequentially. Under the blue light of the alternate source, dried bloodstains on the floor stood out more clearly. A trail of small blood droplets stretched from the kitchen into the hallway, then spread into the living room. Based on spatter direction and droplet density, technicians analyzed that a victim had moved or been dragged while still alive. At the coffee table, a large blood pool, with edges drying faster than the center, indicating it had been there at least 48 hours. The drag smear extended to the wall corner, where Tom Riley's body was found, supporting the hypothesis he was attacked first, then moved to the central area. On the carpet, the forensics team cut 3 samples for blood and fiber testing. One matched the home's nylon carpet fibers, another had blue cotton threads, matching the fabric scrap found in the yard the day before. Preliminary analysis showed the cotton's weave and color consistent with children's clothing. Wallace noted, possible one of the 2 children injured on site, dragged out of the house. Forensics technicians continued dusting for shoe prints. Results showed overlapping impressions, with 2 main types: small athletic shoe prints, child-sized and large men's size, 12 boots with thick soles and fishbone tread patterns, matching the anomalous tire tracks outside. The large prints were prominent in the hallway, leading straight to the back door, indicating the perpetrator exited this way after the crime. Beside those prints, a smaller heel mark, likely Linda's, overlaid the blood, suggesting she moved briefly before death. When scanning the kitchen with fluorescent light, the team detected dozens of faint smudges on the refrigerator door, sink, and doorknobs, smeared fingerprints, but still retaining natural skin oils. They dusted with black powder, lifting 4 complete prints. One differed from the Carver family members on file. Wallace ordered copies sent immediately to headquarters for matching. In the master bedroom, they recovered a long black hair fiber stuck to the duct tape around Linda's head. The hair was pulled out by the root, with follicle cells intact. It was bagged in nylon, and numbered 22, the most significant DNA evidence at the scene. Meanwhile, in Evan's room, they found two separate loose duct tape scraps, one stuck to the bed frame, the other on the floor, bearing a small fingerprint. Preliminary analysis identified it as a child's print, but unclear which of the three children. As the forensics team packed up in the living room, technician Kim operated the wood surface scanner, detecting marks from a hard object, impacting the floor 3 times in succession, creating 3 round divots, 3.2 centimeters in diameter. This diameter matched the head of a common Easton framing hammer, the type Tom Riley used. Combined with victim injuries, Wallace concluded preliminarily, weapon was a framing hammer, likely taken by the perpetrator from inside the house. Outside the back porch, the waterlogged ground still held large boot prints running parallel, one leading into the forest, another returning to the porch, indicating the perpetrator moved back and forth multiple times. At the rear fence, a technician spotted a dark red paint smear on a wooden post. A paint chip was collected for matching, suspected from a vehicle body contacting when parked against the fence. This aligned with prior info on anomalous tire tracks from the initial search. Inside the cabin, the bloodstain pattern analysts began reconstructing the event sequence. Perpetrator entered through the back door, possibly while the family was awake. Tom attacked first in the kitchen. Linda attempted to flee to the living room, but was subdued. Then the 2 children witnessed, and were restrained. Evan may have been injured trying to protect his mother. The 2 younger children, Lucas and Megan, were taken out through the back door, where small blood spots appeared near the porch steps. By late afternoon, the team completed evidence collection: 16 blood samples, 5 duct tape scraps, 3 zip tie segments, 4 complete shoe prints, 7 fiber samples, 1 hair fiber, and 2 paint chips, all numbered, sealed in plastic boxes. Wallace reviewed the scene log, his voice even but weighted. In the preliminary conclusion section, he wrote, "Weapon identified framing hammer. Perpetrator movement, back door to West Forest. At least 1 suspect, possible victim acquaintance. 2 missing children, signs of removal from scene." Before leaving the cabin, Wallace ordered final overall scene photos under natural twilight light. The fading late-day sun filtered through the windows, casting over the silent room dotted with numbered evidence markers on the floor. Outside, the police team packed gear, yellow tape still strung around the porch. As Wallace stepped out, he paused on the threshold, staring toward the western forest where light was dying. He knew this case wouldn't wrap quickly. The traces were too neat, the perpetrator seeming to have planned every step. In the memo to headquarters that evening, he added the final line: "Scene indicates organized and controlled violent behavior. Suspect likely solitary, familiar with house structure and family routines. Recommend expanding search to 10-mile radius, focusing west toward Pisgah Trail highway access." On the morning of the 20th, the 3 bodies arrived at the Henderson County Hospital morgue. Light rain fell, cold damp air seeping into the sterile white hallways. Chief Medical Examiner Elaine Porter and 2 assistants began the examinations at 8 a.m., with Lieutenant Wallace observing from the viewing room. He needed clear answers for what he'd seen at the Carver cabin. The first case was Tom Riley, 37 years old. As the duct tape around his head was removed, the skull revealed 3 even-spaced round depressions, penetrating to the bone, each over 3 centimeters in diameter, impact direction from above, characteristic of a framing hammer. His wrist showed antemortem zip tie impressions. Preliminary conclusion: death from severe cranial trauma, rapid blood loss, time of death around midnight, on May 17th. No stab wounds or gunshot residue, indicating the hammer as the sole weapon. The second victim, Linda Carver, 40 years old, had clumps of hair matted with industrial duct tape polymer. In the temple wound, the doctor found tiny granules, thermoplastic polymer fragments, possibly from gloves or a plastic-wrapped hammer handle. Her wrists bore zip tie marks, one side deeply grooved, the other looser, indicating resistance before restraint. 3 head traumas, including a 4 cm skull fracture at the crown, causing subdural vessel rupture. She died slowly, between 10:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on May 17. The third body, Evan Carver, 13 years old, found in the children's room. Limbs tightly bound, mouth sealed with blood-soaked silver tape. Head depression same shape but lower angle, suggesting the perpetrator bent down, or the victim knelt. His hair contained small wood fragments from the cabin floor. Blood in the mouth and lungs indicated he was still breathing on first impact. Time of death approximated his mother's, within half an hour. All 3 examinations showed the same pattern: blunt force to the head with a rounded heavy object, zip tie restraints, duct tape over the mouth, controlled attack. The perpetrator acted methodically, not impulsively. Dr. Porter confirmed, all deceased between 10 p.m. and midnight on May 17, 1998. The forensics team continued ancillary sampling. In Linda's hair, a thin black thread, suspected from rubber gloves. From Tom's wound, 3 gray metallic granules containing iron and manganese, matching Easton hammer head composition. In Evan's dried blood, 2 glossy red paint flecks, industrial automotive paint, same hue as the fence smear at the cabin. This sample went to the materials lab for color code to trace suspect vehicles. Additionally, breath and hair tests on the 2 adults showed low toluene and butane levels, solvents in industrial adhesive, confirming heavy-duty duct tape use. Polymer adhesion to skin and hair could trace batch origins at building supply stores, potentially useful for investigation. After completing the 3 reports, Wallace was invited to a small conference room. Dr. Porter presented sole weapon: a framing hammer, 3 consistent wound sites and angles, temple, crown, nape, indicating an experienced assailant, precise and decisive strikes. No signs of assault or robbery, motive purely homicidal, not material gain. Use of zip ties and heavy duct tape suggested familiarity with technical materials, possibly mechanics or construction trade. She handed Wallace 3 evidence bags, polymer fragments, paint flecks, foreign hair, for SBI Raleigh lab. If we get the paint color code, we'll have a lead on the vehicle. Wallace nodded, noting perpetrator wore gloves, used hammer on site, acted fast, possibly alone. Victims subdued in minutes. The 2 children may have witnessed, then removed from the house. As Wallace peered through the glass at the exam tables, the 3 bodies lay still under white sheets, beside numbered evidence trays, marked in red pen. In his mind, the picture assembled: precise blows, industrial materials, automotive paint traces, perpetrator, intimate with the house layout. Everything pointed to a cold, calculating killer, with time to prepare meticulously. On the drive from the hospital, Wallace received a brief from the scene unit. Tire tracks and red paint matched the west fence location, heading toward Pisgah Trail. He jotted in his notebook, linking to Porter's conclusions, both threads pointing to a technically savvy suspect driving a red-painted vehicle, fleeing around midnight. At headquarters, he submitted the summary report: cause of death, traumatic brain injury from rounded blunt object. Time of death, 10 p.m., midnight. Polymer materials and red paint indicate perpetrator ties to technical or automotive repair fields. All 3 victims attacked identically, showing organized, controlled behavior and crime scene familiarity. As he signed his name, Wallace knew it was just the beginning. Behind the 3 deaths loomed 2 missing children, and all they had now were a few paint flecks, a foreign hair fiber, and the cold blood trails lingering on the flat rock cabin floors. The next morning, as the autopsy report was just being finalized, the search plan for the 2 Carver children was expanded across the entire Flat Rock area. Police classified the case as Amber Priority 1, the highest level for suspected child abductions. From the crack of dawn, rescue units, forensic personnel, and K-9 teams converged on Gravel Creek Road, turning the woods around the cabin into the primary search zone. The search radius was widened to 10 miles, stretching from the base of Flat Rock Hill to the forest line connecting Pisgah Trail, where red paint traces and unusual tire tracks had been discovered. Lieutenant Wallace directly commanded the scene, dividing the area into grid squares and assigning each to a team. 2 bloodhounds were given scent samples from Lucas and Megan's clothing collected in the cabin. Their barks echoed through the cold mist, mingling with the crunch of wet leaves. Around 9 o'clock, the search team spotted Jeep tire impressions imprinted on the damp ground at the edge of the trail. The herringbone tread pattern matched the sample collected the previous day, with a 62-inch wheelbase consistent with a 1990s Jeep Cherokee. The tracks were old and faint, possibly left a few days before the crime. Technicians photographed them and took soil samples from the tire grooves. Nearby, they picked up a piece of opaque nylon printed with Enterprise Rent, Missouri, suspected to be from a rental car sticker. At the Southern Creek bank, another team found a pink fabric scrap caught in a rock crevice with a pattern matching Megan's pajamas as described by neighbors. The fabric had a few faint blood spots, which were sampled for testing. However, there were no footprints or other items, just the trickling water carrying the scent of damp mud and pine resin. By noon, a rescue helicopter from Asheville scanned the entire forest with infrared cameras but detected no human signals. Meanwhile, the FBI's Charlotte office coordinated the hunt for a red Jeep with an unidentified plate, suspected of moving out on the night of May 17. Descriptions of the 2 children were broadcast to neighboring counties and local radio stations. In the afternoon, Wallace held a quick briefing at the command post set up near the cabin. The materials report confirmed the red paint on the fence matched radiant red used on 1994, 1996 Jeep Grand Cherokees, a rare model. At the same time, the lab confirmed the nylon scrap was likely from an Enterprise rental car sticker in Missouri. 2 small details, but they opened an out-of-state investigative lead. The teams continued sweeping the Western Forest Trail, but the trail went cold at a rocky clearing leading to the old highway. A witness at the Pisgah campground reported seeing a red vehicle pass by near midnight, but couldn't describe the driver. There were no surveillance cameras in the area in 1998, and all traces had been washed away by rain. Late afternoon, the search wrapped up after 10 grueling hours with no results. The teams returned to base, exhausted, people and dogs alike. On the wall map, nearly the entire forest around the cabin was marked with red lines. The 2 children remained completely missing. Wallace noted in his report, no signs of life detected, red Jeep tire tracks unverified. Expand search perimeter beyond Henderson County lines, focusing along Pisgah Trail. That night, news of the Flat Rock Massacre spread across North Carolina. Newspapers ran headlines, like 2 children missing after cabin murder. Police received dozens of calls, most unreliable. In the mobile headquarters, Wallace sat alone staring at the whiteboard pinned with victim photos and the strange fingerprint sample found in the kitchen. He connected the facts with red pen, hammer, polymer, red Jeep, 2 missing children. All trails led west, where Pisgah Trail vanished into the fog. Near midnight, the State Traffic Control Center reported a new detail. In the early hours of May 18, a toll booth camera on Interstate 40 captured footage of a red Jeep heading toward Tennessee, but the image was too blurry to read the plate. The timing, just hours after the crime, was enough to believe the perpetrator had fled Flat Rock that very night with the 2 children. Wallace closed his notebook and gazed out at the drizzling night through the command post window. The Pisgah woods loomed dark, swallowing the light. A heavy feeling rose in his chest. The investigation had outgrown a simple family massacre. The 2 children were no longer just missing victims, They might be the sole living witnesses to the horrific secret that had unfolded in Flat Rock. The next morning, with the search for the two children still fruitless, the investigation shifted to the possibility that the perpetrator was someone known to the family. Lieutenant Wallace met with detectives at the temporary headquarters in Hendersonville. On the board, he pinned victim photos, the cabin map, and a personal relations diagram. From initial statements, only a few names stood out: Richard Carver, Linda's ex-husband, Dean Mitchell, Tom Riley's co-worker, and Earl Beeman, the northern neighbor who'd had a land dispute with the Carver family. The first target was Dean Mitchell, 42, an electrician who'd worked with Tom on local construction sites. Several people said the two had argued over contracts and pay just weeks before the crime. Wallace had the interrogation team summon Mitchell. The man showed up in work clothes, looking tired, and stated he'd been home with his wife watching TV on the night of May 17th, with neighbors as witnesses. When asked about his relationship with Tom, Mitchell admitted the argument, but insisted they'd resolved it. Police searched Mitchell's truck and home. In the garage, they found a framed Easton hammer, similar to the murder weapon. The item was seized and sent to the tech lab. They also took hair, blood, and fingerprint samples for comparison. Mitchell didn't resist, only asking one question before leaving the interrogation room: "You guys think I could do that to his wife and kids?" Meanwhile, the trace evidence team began matching samples from the scene. The strange fingerprints on the fridge didn't match Mitchell's, nor did the polymer samples or red paint turn up in any of his tools or vehicles. DNA from hair and blood on the victim's clothing also cleared him. The forensics report stated no genetic similarity between the suspect and the evidence. Still, Wallace felt they couldn't dismiss Dean too quickly. He ordered a check on Mitchell's movements the week before the crime. Results: he'd taken a job at an Asheville site, with timesheets and supervisor signatures confirming it. Both witnesses and evidence placed Mitchell at home the night of May 17th. After 2 days of investigation, Wallace had to remove him from the suspect list. The next lead was Earl Beeman, the northern neighbor, 51, living alone, who'd been complained about by Linda for repeatedly encroaching on their property line. When police arrived, Beeman was cooperative but irritable. He claimed he hadn't seen anyone from the Carver family in 2 weeks. The house search turned up only gardening tools, empty beer bottles, and an old hunting rifle. No Jeep, no duct tape, no zip ties. However, in a shed behind the house, they found a bin of repair materials containing a roll of silver duct tape, similar to the type used in the crime. The evidence was immediately sealed. The tape sample was sent to the lab alongside the roll from the cabin. 2 days later, results showed the compositions differed. Beeman's was standard issue, thinner, without industrial polymer, plus his DNA and fingerprints had no match to the evidence. Everything cleared him of involvement. That left Richard Carver, Linda's ex-husband, who was re-interviewed. He had a solid alibi, working the night shift at a Hendersonville factory, captured on camera. Even so, Wallace requested a DNA sample for comparison, which came back negative. Clearing all 3 acquaintances plunged the investigation into a dead end. After nearly a week of vetting, the entire known associate angle was officially crossed off the file. The investigative unit shifted to the possibility of a stranger with brief contact to the family, technical know-how, and personal transportation. In his report to the State Bureau of Investigation, Wallace noted clearly, no direct links between victims and local individuals. Perpetrator may be a transient who selected the target randomly, but the precision suggests prior surveillance. That afternoon, as Wallace reviewed crime scene photos, his eye lingered on an old detail, the red paint streak on the fence, at bumper height. He recalled the materials analysis, the rare paint used only on 1994-1996 Jeeps. None of the initial suspects owned one. He realized the acquaintance angle had led them astray. Night fell, leaving only the rain drumming on the tin roof in the command room. Wallace peered through the window at the faint reflection of lights on the wet road. In his notebook, he wrote, "All internal conflicts ruled out. Suspect has 4-wheel drive, red Jeep, possibly from out of state. Coordinate with FBI for database search on stolen or rented vehicles. As he closed the book, a chill rose. The case seemed to be slipping away. They'd eliminated the most obvious suspects, but the 2 children were still missing, and the red Jeep remained just a faint trace in the May rain. In Wallace's mind, a thought flashed. The perpetrator might have prepared so meticulously as to leave nothing but seemingly meaningless details. But those details, sooner or later, would point to the path he'd taken. By the end of 1999, over a year and a half after the Flat Rock massacre, the investigation officially stalled. Every lead had hit a dead end. No witnesses, no usable DNA, no trace of the 2 children. Lieutenant Wallace submitted his final report to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation (SBI), concluding, no new leads, case recommended for cold case status. In the Henderson County Sheriff's Office archives, the box labeled Carver Family, 1,998 inches was carefully sealed. Inside were all the evidence items: the silver duct tape roll, zip ties, red paint chip, strange black hair fiber, forensics reports, and dozens of crime scene photos. Everything was vacuum sealed in moisture-proof bags and shelved on cold steel racks among hundreds of others. The once shocking case had become a forgotten file. Wallace continued his duties, but Flat Rock never left his mind. Many nights, he drove past Gravel Creek Road, where the Carver cabin once stood, now just a moss-covered concrete slab. Townsfolk rarely mentioned the story anymore, dismissing it as that sad 90s case. But for Wallace it was an unhealed scar. In 2003, North Carolina's DNA data modernization program began. A young technician in the SBI evidence room barcoded all the old samples, including Carver's. But at the time, technology was limited. The hair on the duct tape had too few cells for analysis. The file was updated with a note, sample insufficient for CODIS entry. Then it went back on the shelf. By 2005, the case was transferred to the SBI Raleigh Cold Case Unit, which handled backlog files. All documents were digitized and stored in the central database. To young investigators unfamiliar with Flat Rock, it was just another unsolved massacre among hundreds. But for those who'd read the full forensics report, describing 3 bodies and 2 vanished children, it still sent chills. In 2006, Wallace retired after 20 years of service. Before leaving the force, he visited the evidence room one last time. The cold space, with its harsh fluorescent lights, reflecting off hundreds of steel shelves. He paused at the Carver Family, 1,998 inches box, placed a hand on the lid, then walked away in silence. He knew the case wouldn't be solved anytime soon, but deep down, he believed technology would one day speak for what humans had missed. Early 2007 saw the SBI launch a retesting program using STR-DNA techniques, capable of extracting profiles from trace evidence. Carver's case was among those selected. The hair stuck to Linda's duct tape, and the polymer fragment from Tom's wound, were sent to the federal lab in Charlotte. No one expected much. It was just procedure in the digitization process. But that small step would later open a new path for the case long thought eternally forgotten. In December of that year, an internal SBI report added a note: DNA samples digitized and entered into National Comparison System, awaiting response. Then the file was shelved again. The box now bore an extra white label, re-examined 2007, pending match. Time passed, and Carver faded behind newer cases. Flat Rock returned to quiet, while Wallace lived quietly in Raleigh's suburbs. Each time he heard of a case cracked by DNA after decades, he thought of Linda and the missing children. In his memory, the cabin's yellow light still burned, waiting for a small signal to illuminate the lingering shadows of 1998. And that signal, unbeknownst to all, had begun forming in the chilly depths of the federal DNA database, where Linda Carver's tiny hair fiber lay silently, for nearly a decade, until an arrest in another state cracked open the box again, and the Flat Rock obsession awoke once more. In September 2007, nearly 10 years after the Flat Rock massacre, an arrest that seemed unrelated in Tennessee suddenly opened a new lead. In the town of Jackson, police received a tip about a man living in a red Jeep Grand Cherokee parked for days near a roadside forest. When checked, he presented ID as Daniel Holt, 42, freelance mechanic with a prior conviction for child molestation in Kansas. In the vehicle, police found a mini DV camera, a roll of industrial silver duct tape, zip ties, rubber gloves, and a sawed-off shotgun. Holt was arrested for weapons possession and endangering a child, as he was with a boy missing for 2 days from a neighboring county. Deeper investigation revealed Holt had been briefly wanted in 2005 and had a history of travel through several eastern states. His Jeep immediately drew attention. The rear bumper had chipped glossy red paint streaks, and one side panel had white-silver scratches, like from a metal fence. The Tech Lab's paint code analysis identified it as radiant red from 1994-1996 Jeep Grand Cherokees, matching the type noted in the 1998 Carver case file. The info was forwarded to FBI Charlotte, which housed the case data. During the search, police found more suspicious items. The duct tape roll bore the production batch code, E97M, from Silver Bond, matching the code on Flat Rock evidence. The white zip ties were 11 inches long, with the same polymer structure and color. Notably, the Sony Mini DV camera held an unplayed tape labeled Trip 98FR. When this reached the FBI, they immediately requested Holt's DNA for comparison against samples in the national database. 2 days later, CODIS returned results. Daniel Holt's DNA matched the hair fiber from the tape on Linda Carver's head exactly. The match was so rare, the error margin was virtually zero. Immediately, the Carver family 1998 file was reopened and shifted to active federal case status. On September 27, the FBI officially notified the SBI, Daniel Holt's DNA matches Flat Rock evidence. Lieutenant Wallace, now retired, got the call at midnight. When his colleague said, "He's got the red Jeep," he just replied softly, "I knew that hair would speak someday." At Madison County Jail, Holt maintained an eerie calm. He denied ever setting foot in North Carolina. But the evidence in his car told a different story. Under the back seat, investigators found an Easton framing hammer with a black polymer handle, the same type as the murder weapon in the 1998 forensics report. The hammerhead had old brown rust. Metal analysis showed an iron-manganese compound, matching fragments in Tom Riley's skull. The FBI evidence room compared all vehicle samples to old data: paint, tape, zip ties, rubber gloves, all perfect matches. The Silver Bond E97M tape batch was confirmed distributed only in the Southeast in 1998, when the crime occurred. Each find strengthened the undeniable link between Holt and the Carver case. Still, the big question remained: where had Holt been for nearly 10 years? Travel records showed he'd worked as a mechanic along I-40, from Missouri through North Carolina. FBI vehicle rental checks revealed Holt had used a fake credit card to rent a red Jeep from Enterprise Rent-A-Car in St. Louis, Missouri, in April 1998, just a month before the massacre. The vehicle was never returned and reported stolen. The Enterprise Rent Missouri nylon scrap found near the Carver cabin suddenly became perfect comparative evidence. By late October, after compiling all facts, the FBI and SBI held a joint press conference, declaring Daniel Holt the prime suspect in the 1998 Flat Rock massacre. Newspapers called it one of the decade's rare cold cases cracked by DNA. As the FBI prepared to extradite Holt to North Carolina, the Tennessee tech team continued decoding the mini DV camera tape. The footage opened with misty woods, then panned to a 2-story wooden cabin with peeling white painted fencing, identical to the Carver home. The shaky camera, heavy breathing mixed with faint chuckles, then abrupt stop. Wallace was invited to re-watch the video. He stood still for a long time, staring at the frozen frame, then just said he didn't drive by there by chance. He'd been watching them before. The FBI's comprehensive report stated, physical evidence, DNA, and vehicle data all point to Daniel Holt's direct involvement in the 1998 Flat Rock case. Expand investigation to locate 2 still missing minor victims. Nearly 10 years after that rainy 1998 night, the red Jeep had finally surfaced. It carried the once-forgotten hair fiber from the cold file, and the answers Wallace and the original investigators had never stopped awaiting. But they didn't know that behind this newly found clue, another story waited to unfold, the story of the Carver children's final days, and the man who ensured the Flat Rock nightmare hadn't ended. Early November 2007, the Flat Rock case was officially reopened at federal scale. All evidence from Daniel Holt's red Jeep was shipped to the FBI Charlotte lab for comparison against the old Carver family 1998 file. After nearly a decade in cold storage, the silent proofs finally awoke. The black hair fiber, polymer shard, tape roll and red paint chip once deemed meaningless. Technicians used new generation STR-DNA analysis, capable of extracting from minute evidence amounts. The first result stunned the lab. Daniel Holt's DNA matched absolutely at 15 gene loci, with the hair on Linda Carver's tape, error probability virtually zero. Simultaneously, the unidentified fingerprint on the Carver cabin's fridge handle, stored since 1998, matched Holt's print exactly. These 2 results alone confirmed Holt was in the cabin the night of the murders. Other samples were scrutinized meticulously. The silver duct tape roll from Holt's vehicle bore the E97M production code, matching the old roll, adhesive composition, thickness and polymer structure identical. The white zip ties matched in size, flexibility, and cut-end scratches, signs of the same plier type. Analyzing the framing hammer, the tech team found metal particles on the head, matching the iron-manganese compound in Tom Riley's wounds. Each detail reinforced the link between Holt and the Flat Rock massacre. The comprehensive comparison report, over 60 pages, was sent to SBI Raleigh, concluding DNA, fingerprints and physical evidence all matched the 1998 Carver file. However, digging deeper, experts found an anomaly. In the DNA sample from Holt's hammerhead, besides his genetic sequence, there was another male DNA strand, not matching any victim. Simultaneously, a small print on the old zip tie roll didn't belong to Holt or the Carver family. This print had a rare whorl skew pattern, absent from state databases. The FBI immediately launched a new investigative branch, Project Flat Trail, to track potential accomplices. Using Holt's work records, they scanned associates, friends, and travel companions from 1997, 1999. One name stood out: Bill Ramsey, 34, former Henderson County Reserve officer, who quit due to injury, and had time in an Asheville old car restoration group, same area as Holt's work. Ramsey once owned a green pickup with red-painted rear bumper, repainted mid-1998, months after the crime. The forensics team pulled Ramsey's prints from old police files for comparison. Result: 6 matching points out of 12 major characteristics, with the zip tie anomaly. Not enough for conviction, but too close to ignore. When FBI agents reached Boone, North Carolina, they learned Ramsey died in a 2010 car crash. His truck had been scrapped years earlier. Yet in Ramsey's old home, they found a Henderson Reserve uniform set, exact navy blue fiber fabric, matching that on Holt's hammer. These discoveries veered the investigation anew. Detectives re-scanned the Carver file, finding an old 1998 scene perimeter log mentioning a reserve officer assisting traffic, but the name blurred in the original doc. Wallace, invited back as consultant, glanced at the file and said softly, "If that's Ramsey, He was right in our midst without anyone knowing. Early December, the FBI completed final analysis. Fibers on Holt's hammer matched exactly the custom fabric for Henderson Reserve uniforms produced in 1997. In the report to SBI, the conclusion stated clearly, likelihood of at least 2 individuals involved in the Carver case. One identified as Daniel Holt, the other with unidentified male DNA, likely former reserve officer Bill Ramsey. Right after the FBI issued an official press release, 1998 Flat Rock case reopened in full. All files shifted to federal level, and a new task force formed with FBI, SBI, and Henderson PD coordinating. Mission: trace Holt-Ramsey connections, travel data, contacts, and 1998 rental accounts. Reading the release, Wallace just stayed silent. For him, Holt's arrest wasn't closure but a beginning. The new traces proved he hadn't acted alone, and the accomplice might be someone once in uniform, who knew investigative procedures well enough to erase every trace. In his old notebook, Wallace added a line: "One killer, one cover-up." Both knew the law, and crossed it together. From that moment, Flat Rock was no longer the tale of a lone murderer. It became the journey to reclaim a second shadow, the one who might have walked with Holt through that rainy May night years ago, carrying away 2 children vanished from North Carolina, nearly a decade prior. Daniel Holt's interrogation took place on June 17, 2023, at FBI Charlotte headquarters. After DNA and fingerprint forensics confirmed his direct link to the 1998 Flat Rock case, Holt was transferred from federal prison in Tennessee to North Carolina for formal questioning. Though over 50, he retained his chill, vacant eyes, raspy voice, gaunt frame, just like in the old files. Special Agent Sarah Denton, lead on the reopened case, sat across from him. On the table, besides water and recorder, only one old photo, the Carver family of 3, shot in front of the Flat Rock cabin days before they vanished. Holt eyed the photo, squinting. "I've seen them, but you know, I wasn't the only one there." At first he played casual, claiming he'd just driven through Flat Rock by chance, and had nothing to do with that case. But when Denton opened the file, laying out photos of the red Jeep, zip tie segment, and rusted hammer, all seized in his 2007 arrest, Holt's face shifted. His eyes darted, voice dropped low. "You don't know, there was someone else. I wasn't the one calling shots." Denton stayed quiet, just playing a short audio clip, excerpted from an old cassette found in the Dry Creek cabin. A young man's voice broke through, halting. "Hurry up, Bill, they'll wake up." Holt froze, neck veins bulging. "You found that tape?" he asked, voice shaky but feigning calm. After minutes of silence, Holt started talking, at first disjointed, then flowing, as if he'd carried it in his head for 25 years. He spoke of a man named Bill Ramsey, ex-reserve cop in Henderson, who knew too much about hiding a crime. Holt said he met Ramsey in 1997, working at a garage near Asheville. He got criminal psychology, always talked justice and punishment. I thought he was joking. By Holt's account, Ramsey picked the Carver family as target. He said they were rich, cash stashed in the cabin, no one would suspect. Started as robbery, but Ramsey wanted to teach them a lesson for being the kind ruining society. Holt admitted agreeing for the money. He hadn't expected the lesson to be murder. That night, Holt recounted, "I brought the gun, he the hammer. He said he'd handle the adults. I'd watch the kids. I just followed." His voice caught mentioning the children. The girl Megan was eerily quiet. The boy Lucas cried. Then he told me to take them out. Holt bowed his head. I heard the thuds, 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I knew it was done. He said Ramsey then ordered the kids taken. Make it clean. They drove all night to Pisgah Forest, pitched a tent by Dry Creek stream. Ramsey said, "Keep just the girl." The boy knew too much. Here Holt lightly smacked the table, like shaking off the memory. I didn't kill him, Holt insisted. He did. I just stood outside. Then he added, Ramsey made him film it for proof, and Holt himself held the camera. That tape isn't just me, he stressed. If you find it, you'll see him behind me. When Denton pressed why he never reported to police, Holt gave a bitter laugh. Report to who? He was the cop. He knew every procedure, how to stage a scene like an accident. I was just the fool following orders. Denton pushed. Why keep Megan for 25 years? Holt paused long, then answered, because I feared him. Because I thought letting her live meant he'd kill her. I took her away, changed her name, lied she was wanted by cops. I thought I was protecting her, but really I just kept her captive. He confessed, Megan knew nothing of the case until recent years. When Denton asked why, return to Asheville and show up at Denny's, Holt murmured, because I knew it was time. I didn't want to die, carrying it all. I wanted them to find her. The session lasted 6 hours. Finally, Holt signed the official statement, admitting he'd entered the Carver cabin with Bill Ramsey, bound and removed the 2 children from the scene, assisted Ramsey in disposing of Lucas Carver's body at the Dry Creek cabin, held Megan Carver for years under a false identity. The transcript noted, initial motive robbery, crime escalated by accomplice incitement. Holt shows signs of psychological manipulation and fear of Ramsey. Asked last, any proof on Ramsey? Holt just said, hard drive. He kept the original. If he's dead, someone might still have it. Post-interrogation, FBI expanded the Ramsey probe. They uncovered prior violence complaints during his service, shelved in 1995. Ramsey died in a 2010 car wreck. No heirs. His prints, pulled from old files, matched the male DNA sample from Flat Rock exactly. Upon confirmation, Denton returned to Holt's cell with news. He looked up, eyes vacant. So you've seen. I wasn't lying. Then he turned to the wall, muttering he always said he'd never get caught. On June 20th, the FBI officially announced 1998 Flat Rock case reopened on accomplice angle. A task force formed to scour all Ramsey-related docs. Media dubbed it the Two Shadows case in Pisgah Forest. In her end-of-day report, Denton wrote, Daniel Holt isn't just a killer. He's a living witness to a planned crime. But more, he just unlocked the final door to Megan Carver. Holt was held pending charges, while FBI prepped a new search, not for victims, but survivors. And from that confession, 25 years post-crime, Megan Carver was about to re-enter the world, not in missing persons, but as proof that justice, though late, could still emerge from a man's long-forgotten admissions. On July 2, 2023, Asheville police received a call from a Denny's restaurant manager. The woman reported that a young girl had entered with an older man who looked just like the fugitive from an old file. I just looked at the photo in the newspaper again. She's the spitting image of the little girl who went missing in Flat Rock in 1998, the manager said. When the patrol team arrived, the man was indeed Daniel Holt, convicted in Tennessee in 2007 and released on medical parole. The girl with him was a woman in her 30s, with dark brown hair and an eerie gaze. When asked for ID, she said softly, I don't have real papers. My name is Megan. Police immediately contacted the FBI's Charlotte office. After collecting a DNA sample on the spot, preliminary results matched 99.8% with the DNA of Linda Carver, the missing mother. After 25 years, Megan Carver, the little girl who vanished with her family in 1998, had been found. In the first interrogation, Megan sat still, her hands gripping a cup of water tightly. She spoke slowly, haltingly. I remember the cabin, I remember my brother. Then everything went dark. He said I was his daughter. She recounted how Holt made her change names multiple times, moving around the southeast U.S., forbidding contact with anyone. He said the police were the bad guys, that if I ran, they'd take me to a camp, Megan said. According to records, Holt raised her under the alias Clara Hines, claiming she was adopted. The two lived isolated in the Knoxville suburbs, with no one suspicious because Megan was homeschooled. I didn't know I was kidnapped. I just felt something was wrong every time I looked at the face in the mirror, like it didn't belong to me. During the interrogation, Megan mentioned another cabin in the Pisgah Forest, a place Holt had taken her to as a child. There was a smell of smoke and ash. He said not to go into the room with the wooden beams. When asked if she saw anything strange, she replied, "There was a metal box buried under the floor, and I once heard him crying." This detail prompted the FBI to immediately reopen old maps and cross-reference them with GPS data recovered from Holt's seized Jeep in 2007. It all led to the Dry Creek area, deep in the Pisgah Forest, a spot that had never been searched before. During questioning, Megan described Holt not as hot-tempered, but as completely controlling through fear. He said I owed him my life, that only he could protect me from the second man. That statement stunned Special Agent Sarah Denton. The second man was a new detail that had never appeared in the files. Megan recounted that as a child, she saw Holt often carrying an old camcorder and a black tape box. He said it was memories of our mother. I was never allowed to watch. She described the silver mini DV camera, matching the plastic fragment found in the Carver cabin in 1998. Denton realized the details Megan described matched Holt's previous statements perfectly. 2 children taken from the home, an adult directing, and a second cabin used to clean everything up. When the FBI showed her an old photo of the Carver family, Megan burst into tears. I remember the smell of my mom's apple pie, my brother's laughter. I thought they were dreams. She stared at the photo so long that an agent had to gently place a hand on her shoulder. The next day, full DNA testing confirmed her identity. The FBI press release stated, "The woman found in Asheville, North Carolina, on July 2, 2023, is Megan Carver, the missing victim in the 1998 Flat Rock case." News spread across America. TV broadcasts called it the return after 25 years of silence. Police took Holt into emergency custody. He didn't resist, only muttering, "I promised I'd let her live." In the interrogation room, upon hearing Megan was still alive, Lieutenant John Wallace, the first officer at the cabin in 1998, went silent. He said, 25 years we never stopped looking for that little girl. At the same time, Megan was transferred to a psychological recovery center in Charlotte. She began cooperating with the FBI, providing a hand-drawn map of places Holt had taken her, to streams, wooden bridges, and a burned cabin roof. "I think my brother is still there," she said, her voice trembling. On July 10, the investigative team confirmed the area on the map matched coordinates recovered from Holt's hard drive data. A large-scale search was launched, leading to the discovery of the second cabin in the Pisgah Forest, containing ash, zip ties, and a hard drive fragment bearing Lucas Carver's DNA traces. The internal report noted, Megan Carver's testimony opened a breakthrough. After 25 years, the sole surviving witness confirmed the existence of a second crime scene and accomplice behavior. When the FBI informed Megan of the results, she only said softly, "At least now I know where my brother is sleeping." That evening, Wallace stood on the porch of headquarters, looking at the photo of little Megan pinned to the old bulletin board, a photo that had closed thousands of fruitless searches. Now that same little girl had unlocked the truth of the case that had haunted North Carolina for a quarter-century. After Megan's testimony, the FBI and state police immediately launched a search operation for the second cabin she mentioned, the place where Daniel Holt and his accomplice had hidden for years. GPS maps recovered from the mini DV hard drive matched coordinates in Dry Creek, deep in the Pisgah Forest, about 40 miles from Flat Rock. On July 18, 2023, a team of more than 30 investigators entered the area. The forest trail was narrow and muddy, barely wide enough for a single lane of pickup trucks. When they reached the marked spot, a half-burned wooden house appeared before them. walls collapsed, roof rotted. Inside remained ash and rusted iron frames. Wallace, now an FBI consultant, fell silent. This is the place the girl mentioned. As the forensics team began combing through, they discovered zip ties, silver duct tape casings, and a mini DV hard drive fragment under the ash pile. Nearby was a half-burned steel wire wrapped around a beam, matching Megan's description. Under the damp soil, technicians found bone fragments mixed with black ash, initially thought to be animal bones, but rapid testing showed traces of human tissue. The scene report stated, "The Dry Creek cabin shows signs of deliberate body incineration. The ash contains high phosphorus levels, consistent with human bones burned at high temperatures." In the charred wood pile, they also found shotgun shell casings, a child's shirt button, and a plastic bracelet fragment engraved with an L matching the bracelet Lucas Carver wore in the family photo. Megan was invited to identify and confirmed, "Yes, my brother's bracelet. I remember Mom bought it at the Flat Rock Fair." The FBI cordoned off the area, digging deep around the foundation. Under the soil behind the cabin, the forensics team found a shallow burial pit, containing charred black bones and small skull fragments. The samples were sent to the Charlotte lab. DNA results after 48 hours confirmed, the remains belonged to Lucas Carver, missing since 1998. When the information was announced, the entire town of Flat Rock fell silent. After 25 years, the question, "Where is Lucas?" finally had an answer. During analysis, technicians also detected industrial fuel traces in the ash, proving the perpetrator used flammable solvents, not a natural fire. Near the beam area, forensics cameras captured a burned footprint streak, size 11 shoe, matching the prints collected at the Carver cabin in 1998. Special Agent Sarah Denton compiled the report. The Dry Creek cabin was built secretly, unregistered on Henderson County maps. Inside showed signs of captivity, including small chains, an old blanket, and a metal bed frame. At least 2 individuals were present, one filming, one committing the crime. When reviewing scene photos, Wallace noticed a chilling detail on the remaining wall, a charcoal scrawl. "If you see this, I'm sorry." The handwriting matched Holt's, per signature comparison in the files. The press quickly reported, "Mysterious cabin in Pisgah Forest reveals truth buried for 25 years." That evening, Holt was brought from his cell to view the scene photos. He stared silently for a long time, then muttered, "I knew they'd find that place someday." When Denton asked why he burned the cabin, he replied, "I followed his orders. I just wanted to end everything." Detailed forensics showed polymer melt traces in the ash, corresponding to mini DV camera remnants. The data recovery team extracted an intact memory card, containing nearly 8 hours of footage. The FBI believes it's the original tape recording the entire crime. On July 20th, Wallace and Denton stood amid the cabin's ash ruins. Afternoon light filtered through the canopy, illuminating the dark soil foundation. Wallace said, he thought burning it would end it. But fire never burns away the truth. By evening, a specialized vehicle carried evidence out of Pisgah Forest. The truck lights reflected through thick fog, illuminating the trail that had led Holt and Ramsey there 25 years earlier. Police seized all DNA samples, burn materials, and hard drives for data recovery, marking the start of the case's most critical phase, decoding the video and final confession. The FBI report concluded, the Dry Creek cabin is the second crime scene of the 1998 Flat Rock case, where Lucas Carver's body was incinerated. Physical traces and DNA confirmed the presence of Daniel Holt and William Ramsey. This is the breakthrough proving the case had 2 scenes and 2 perpetrators. As the evidence truck vanished into the forest, Denton said softly, "Finally, we found where the light went out." And with that discovery, 25 years of darkness in the Flat Rock case began to unravel. After finding the half-burned mini DV hard drive at the Dry Creek cabin, the FBI Charlotte forensics team began data recovery. After 3 days of magnetic scanning technology processing, the first frames emerged. Blurry, noisy, but clear enough to make out silhouettes and voices. The opening segment showed a dark dirt road, Jeep headlights cutting through fog. A raspy male voice said, "Turn off the lights, they'll see." Another younger voice replied, "Keep filming, Bill. I want to see them one last time before we do it." The camera panned to the Carver cabin window, showing Linda clearing the table, the 2 children playing. Off frame, Holt whispered, "She still hasn't locked the back door." Audio analysis confirmed the 2 male voices on the tape were Daniel Holt and William Bill Ramsey, former Henderson Reserve officer. This was the first direct evidence linking Ramsey to the case. The next segment showed the 2 in the Jeep, Holt holding a gun, Ramsey a hammer. "I'll go in first, tie up the kids." "No, let me handle the adult. You've contaminated the scene too much already." After the click of a round chambering, Ramsey said coldly, "Just stay quiet, no one will find out." The final pre-crime footage was from outside the cabin window, Lucas and Megan playing cards, golden lamplight spilling out. Ramsey said, "Now or never." Holt replied, "After the lights go out." The lights snapped off. On August 2nd, the FBI recovered a second video segment, code FR2, filmed inside the Dry Creek cabin. Flickering firelight, Holt hunched over with a hammer, Ramsey standing behind ordering, "Hurry up, it has to be done before dawn." Holt looked up, trembling. "If they find..." Ramsey cut him off. "I worked with them, no one will get here in time." The end showed only firelight, and Ramsey murmuring softly, "Pretend it never happened." Audio recovery added a partial monologue. Holt's voice choked. "I heard it calling. He said, 'Burn it,' just like cleaning trash." Experts concluded Holt was influenced and manipulated by Ramsey. From this data, the FBI compiled the Flat Rock Data Decoding Report, stating 4 conclusions. FR1 recorded Holt and Ramsey surveilling the Carver cabin. FR2 recorded Ramsey directing Holt to dispose of the body. FR3 is audio of Ramsey discussing police procedures, proving his insider experience. Filming timestamps match the crime date. Special Agent Sarah Denton reported directly to the Department of Justice. Ramsey wasn't just an accomplice, he was the mastermind. GPS maps extracted from Holt's Jeep matched the exact Flat Rock, Pisgah Forest route, stopping at coordinates aligning with the Dry Creek cabin. On August 10th, the FBI and Department of Justice held a press conference. Data recovered from the Dry Creek cabin confirms William Bill Ramsey, former Henderson County Reserve officer, as the mastermind accomplice in the 1998 Flat Rock case. News spread across America. Henderson residents were stunned. Ramsey had been a familiar face in rescue operations, seen as trustworthy. Lieutenant John Wallace, the lead investigator in 1998, reviewed the footage. Seeing the Carver family in peaceful routine just before the tragedy, he only said softly, "He filmed them like prey, and he was once a cop." On August 15th, the FBI completed a 312-page comprehensive report affirming Ramsey selected the target, planned and directed Holt. Holt executed under orders. Ramsey used industry knowledge to erase traces and manipulate Holt. Metadata remnants on the hard drive still held notations, FR98, Phase 1 inch and Phase 2, indicating Ramsey treated the crime like a project. The FBI assessed he had schizophrenic tendencies and a power obsession, viewing the crime as a purification ritual. On August 20th, the Department of Justice issued a posthumous indictment against William Ramsey. Though dead since 2010, he was formally noted as the mastermind accomplice. The file added the annotation, confirmed via video and DNA evidence. That night, Wallace stood before the screen replaying the end of FR2, cabin firelight, 2 figures fading into fog. He whispered, "They wanted to keep a trophy, but that tape is what convicted them." The next morning, Headlines blared across the press. Video found in burned cabin solves 25-year-old North Carolina cold case. When asked his thoughts, Wallace only said, "Technology did what human memory couldn't, made the truth find its way back." The report ended with Special Agent Denton's notation, "From the silent data, we heard the Carver family's voices. That was the sound of justice, even when replayed after 25 years." With that video, the Flat Rock case entered its final phase, and with Holt's impending confession, the picture of the crime would complete two shadows in the 1998 rainy night, one with a hammer, one with a camera, and both, in the end, brought to light by their own memories. When Daniel Holt was transferred from the federal prison in Florence back to Charlotte for the final interrogation after the FBI decoded the video confirming the existence of a second suspect, William Bill Ramsey, former reserve deputy of Henderson County. In the interrogation room, Holt sat silently, hands clasped across his chest. When Special Agent Sarah Denton placed Ramsey's photo on the table, he just gave a faint smile. "I knew this day would come. He always told me, if anyone gets exposed, I'll be the first one." Holt initially denied everything, saying Ramsey was just an acquaintance and the tape was edited. But when Denton presented Ramsey's DNA evidence found in the Dry Creek cabin, along with matching fingerprints on the zip tie, he fell silent for a long time, then nodded. "You want to know everything? Fine. But don't think I was the one who started it." He spoke slowly, his voice hoarse and thick. In 1997, Holt met Ramsey in a car repair group in Asheville. Ramsey had been a reserve deputy, discharged after an injury. He had a strange charisma, Holt said, always talking about justice, about how the world needed to be cleansed. Ramsey knew Holt had a prior record and was easy to manipulate. Early in 1998, Ramsey said there was a house in the Flat Rock woods where the owners hid cash. He said the job was clean and quick. Holt just thought it was a burglary, not realizing Ramsey had been stalking the Carver family for weeks. He filmed them, recorded their routines. Holt recounted, "I didn't know what he planned until we were inside the house. On the night of the crime, the two brought guns, zip ties and a hammer. Holt carried the gun, Ramsey the hammer. He told me to tie up the two kids while he handled the adults. I thought he was just threatening them." Holt bowed his head, his voice low, "But then I heard the pounding, hard, continuous. I knew it was all over." Ramsey ordered them to take Lucas and Megan outside, saying leave one as a hostage. When Holt asked why, Ramsey just said, "A living witness lets us control the story." They drove all night to the Pisgah Forest, stopping at the Dry Creek cabin. There, Ramsey tied up the two kids, threatening to kill them if they made a sound. "He looked at the boy like a lab rat," Holt said. "Then he took him outside, told me to watch the girl. I heard a scream, then silence." Holt confessed, "I didn't save him. I just stood there." Afterward, Ramsey came back and said, "Now there's only one left." They burned the cabin, buried the ashes and items, and Ramsey told Holt to take Megan. He said, "Keep her, teach her to forget everything. If not, he'll come back." From then on, Holt lived with Megan for 25 years, changing names, moving constantly. "I lied to her that the police were looking. I thought I was protecting her, but really, I was just making things worse." When Denton asked why he returned to Asheville in 2023, Holt replied, "Because I knew I was dying soon. I wanted someone to know the truth, and I wanted the girl to be free." The agent showed him photos of the excavated Dry Creek cabin. Holt stared at the image of the black ashes. That's where he called it the cleansing ritual. He believed killing was God's test. "I thought he was crazy, but I still followed him." After many hours, Holt signed the official statement, admitting breaking into the Carver cabin with Bill Ramsey, tying and transporting the two children from the scene, assisting Ramsey in disposing of Lucas's body at Dry Creek, holding Megan Carver captive for years under a false identity. He added that Ramsey had returned to the Dry Creek cabin in 2001, demanding Holt hand over the original tapes. He said if I betrayed him, he'd go public with everything and pin it all on me. The last Holt heard of Ramsey was in 2005, When he learned Ramsey died in an accident, in 2010, he just said quietly, "He always wanted to go first." The FBI verified the confession and found many details matched. Ramsey had been complained about for violence in the force. His record was sealed in 1995. His DNA matched the sample from the Flat Rock case. Police also found a hand-drawn map of the Pisgah area by Ramsey, matching the Dry Creek cabin location. Holt was asked, "Do you regret it?" He replied, "I regret staying silent. If I'd spoken up early, maybe the girl wouldn't have suffered all those years." When Denton mentioned Megan, he looked up, "She's the reason I'm still alive. I couldn't save anyone else, but at least I didn't kill her." On August 27, the FBI announced the investigation results: Daniel Holt and William Ramsey as accomplices in the 1998 Flat Rock massacre. Initial purpose robbery, later turning into murder and kidnapping. Ramsey as the mastermind, knowledgeable about police procedures, directing Holt's actions. Holt's DNA and confession fully match the evidence. The Department of Justice later issued a posthumous indictment for Bill Ramsey. Though dead, he was identified as the lead accomplice. In the file, the last line read, "William Ramsey, deceased 2010, identified as lead perpetrator." At the press conference announcing the results, Lieutenant John Wallace, who had followed the case for 2 decades, spoke briefly. "We can't call this full justice, but at least the truth has a voice." Daniel Holt signed the confession minutes, without requesting a lawyer. When asked the last thing he wanted to say, he replied, "I don't need forgiveness, I just want the girl to know, I didn't kill her." When the Flat Rock case was officially declared closed, Holt was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms, while Ramsey was noted as the mastermind. Megan Carver, the girl missing since 1998, became the sole living witness, a symbol of delayed but enduring justice. In a letter to the FBI, Megan wrote, "I don't forgive, but I thank you for naming the truth. Now I can live on without hiding." That afternoon, Wallace returned to the Pisgah Forest, where the Dry Creek cabin once stood. Amid the damp, chilly scene, he stood silently for a long time, watching sunlight filter through the canopy onto a new small plaque, "In memory of the Carver family, justice after 25 years. He said softly, "No darkness can hide crime forever. Sometimes the light just has to take the long way to where it needs to shine." On November 15, 2023, the Federal Court of North Carolina opened the trial of Daniel Holt, closing the Flat Rock case after 25 years. The sky was overcast, with light rain, just like the night in 1998, when the Carver family disappeared. Hundreds of locals and reporters gathered outside the courthouse, carrying photos of the victims and white daisies. Daniel Holt appeared in a gray prison jumpsuit, gaunt, with white hair. He sat silently on the defendant's bench, looking at no one. Across from him was federal prosecutor Laura Kingsley, who had followed the case for 3 years. She began in a firm voice, "After 25 years, 3 people dead, 1 child in prison through her childhood. And today, the man who caused it all faces justice." The indictment included 12 counts, including 3 first-degree murders, 1 kidnapping, and several other federal charges. The prosecution played the restored FR2 video from the Dry Creek cabin, flickering firelight, shadows of 2 men, and Ramsey's voice ringing out, "Hurry up, we have to finish before dawn." The courtroom was dead silent. Holt bowed his head, unable to look. The defense attorney could only claim Holt was manipulated by Ramsey, but the prosecution countered, "Fear cannot justify crime." The defendant's own hands tied, burned and kidnapped. On the second day, Megan Carver took the stand, her face calm but her eyes steely. She recounted the night her mother and brother were killed, and 25 years living under a false identity. "He told me I was his daughter," she said, "but I knew it was a lie. I lived with the man who killed my family." When the prosecutor asked, "Did he ever save you?" Megan replied softly, "No, he just let me live to remember I had died." The court continued to hear DNA evidence confirming both Holt and Ramsey were at the scene. Ramsey had died in 2010, but the court still noted him as the lead accomplice. On the third day, Holt was allowed to speak. His voice was low and hoarse. "I have no excuses. I just want to say, she deserves to live." Megan looked up. "You didn't save me. You just prolonged my pain." In the afternoon, the jury took less than 4 hours to reach a verdict. The judge read, "The court finds the defendant Daniel Holt guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and related charges. Sentence 3 consecutive life terms, no parole." No one spoke. Holt closed his eyes, head bowed low. In the back row, Lieutenant John Wallace, who had followed the case for half his life, wrote the final line in his old notebook, 25 years, justice returns. After the trial, Prosecutor Kingsley told the press, "Justice doesn't just come from the sentence, but from the persistence that refuses to let go." Major newspapers ran headlines, "Flat Rock case closed, justice after 25 years." Megan left the courthouse quietly. When reporters asked if she forgave Holt, she just said, "Forgiveness isn't for him, it's how I save myself." 3 days later, Holt was returned to the Florence Federal Prison. He didn't appeal, didn't meet with a lawyer, just left a note, "I've said it all. If there's hell, I'll meet him there." At the same time, the U.S. Department of Justice completed the posthumous indictment proceedings for Bill Ramsey, officially noting him as the deceased lead accomplice. The case file was stamped red, "Federal confirmed case." A week later, Wallace returned to the Pisgah Forest, where the Dry Creek cabin once stood. Only a small plaque remained, engraved in memory of the Carver family, "Justice after 25 years." He stood amid the mist, listening to the wind through the trees, recalling the dim light in that cabin back then. The light thought extinguished, now shining again in the final verdict. In his journal, Wallace wrote, "Justice has no age. It just needs people brave enough to wait, even when the light has long been out." The Flat Rock 1998 case closed, and somewhere in the North Carolina woods, the souls once buried could finally rest. Nearly a month after the final verdict, the FBI and North Carolina Department of Justice held a press conference announcing the comprehensive report on the 1998 Flat Rock case, a case seen as a prime example of the power of forensic science and investigative persistence. FBI spokesperson Dana Reeves opened, "No case truly closes until the truth is found. Flat Rock proves that science can bring justice back, even after 25 years. The report, over 500 pages long, compiled the entire investigation journey, from the first call from a Flat Rock resident reporting the Carver family's disappearance, to finding Megan Carver at Denny's in 2023. 3 generations of investigators, dozens of witnesses, thousands of hours of analysis created the result that experts called the resurrection of justice. The document highlighted 3 key factors that cracked the case: forensic DNA, digital data recovery, and long-term evidence preservation. First, thanks to next-generation DNA technology, blood and hair samples once insufficient for testing were reanalyzed, confirming Bill Ramsey's traces at the Dry Creek cabin. Next, the FBI Charlotte Digital Forensics team recovered the partially burned mini-DV hard drive, extracting the 2 FR1 and FR2 videos, revealing images and voices of Holt and Ramsey. Finally, it was the state's long-term evidence storage system maintained since 1999 that kept scene samples viable for comparison after 25 years. In the investigation summary section, the FBI emphasized, "Science is just a tool, it's human determination that turns it into justice." The report also named key contributors, Lieutenant John Wallace, who reopened the file in 2004, Special Agent Sarah Denton, who tracked Megan and interrogated Holt, and the forensics technicians who recovered the digital data, all awarded the 2023 Special Commendation for Justice. At the award ceremony, Wallace, now retired, spoke briefly, No technology solves a case on its own. It's the people who believe the truth is still out there who make it happen. The Flat Rock 1998 file was officially sealed and archived at the Federal Records Warehouse in the Atlanta region, coded FR98, solved. On the cover a handwritten note, closed after 25 years, DNA and digital forensics confirmed. Megan Carver, now 33, sent a short letter to the investigation team. I can't get back what was lost, but thanks to you, I can live on with the truth. Thank you for not forgetting us. Daniel Holt continues serving at the federal prison in Florence, without appeal, and refusing a lawyer. According to guards, he spends most of his time reading books and handwriting what he remembers about Ramsey. In a psychological evaluation, he said, "I've killed more people than the victims. I killed myself from day one." Early in 2024, the FBI officially added the Flat Rock 1998 case to the historic cold cases solved list, alongside other notable cases cracked by DNA technology and digital data storage. The Federal Investigator Training Academy plans to use it as a model case study for the Forensic Persistence in Cold Cases course. The final page of the summary report has Wallace's handwritten line, in place of a conclusion: "Justice doesn't forget, it just waits until science is strong enough to help it speak the truth again." And with that line, the Flat Rock case, starting from a small cabin in the North Carolina woods in 1998, officially closed after 25 years. The light of justice finally pierced through the dust of time, giving voice to those silenced too long. Looking back at the Flat Rock 1998 case, from the red Jeep, forgotten roll of duct tape and zip tie, to the partially burned mini-DV hard drive recovered, then the call at Denny's in Asheville that found Megan, there are a few very real-life lessons for America today. First, community vigilance truly saves lives. The Denny's manager didn't get curious and ignore it, but called the police right away upon recognizing the face on the missing child flyer. That's the right way. Report it. Keep a safe distance. Don't confront yourself. Small safety habits sometimes cut off opportunities for bad guys. In the story, the unlocked back door allowed entry. In modern life, maintain a lights, doors, alarms, cameras checklist every night. Teach kids the don't open the door for strangers rule, and set up family passwords when someone claims to be a friend of mom and dad. Third, forensic technology and long-term data storage are lifelines for justice. A hair stuck to tape, Jeep paint scrapes, uniform fabric, and old GPS data only paid off because they were preserved to standard for years. Support budgets for DNA labs, cold case units, and evidence storage policies helps the community itself. Fourth, don't forget to care for survivors. Megan had to relearn her real name, overcome 2 decades of gaslighting, support trauma-informed therapy services, 988, 900 Elevance hotlines, and local victim support organizations. Finally, interagency cooperation makes a difference. Lieutenant Wallace's persistence, SBI, FBI, coordination, and national data matching closed the justice circle after 25 years. So practical advice: be the safety eyes of your neighborhood, invest in locks, alarms, teach kids escape skills, keep identification papers, photos updated, and when you see something off, call the authorities. Justice moves slow, but it comes if everyone does their small part right. Thank you for following the justice journey of the Flat Rock 1998 case to the end, where the truth was finally found after 25 years. Please hit subscribe and turn on notifications to join us in exploring more cold cases, where justice still waits to be awakened.